Hi, hello, and welcome to another breakfast with INTEA. It's Friday, and I guess it's the last breakfast in this season?
Yep, I think so. It's our last one before we return back in autumn. Yeah.
Yes, and we wanted to talk about something exciting and fresh, and the news hit us in the beginning of this week that Apple has launched something that is supposedly going to revolutionize everything that we do as human beings. They call it spatial computing. That's a very new term, I would say. So let's see what that is and how that impacts learning and development, and what should you chat with your colleagues in the next week when the news get to your management and they're like, hey, have you heard about this thing? And what do you think it's going to be? Should we buy one or should we buy 1,000 of those? Right? 1,000, yeah, they're expensive, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And let's coin a new term: spatial learning. Does it exist? The term? I don't know. We can Google that later. But
right.
yeah.
Let me share my screen real quick, and we get to chatting. Right. So we're live on YouTube, and let us know if you can actually hear us. You can message Raivis if you know his number. And for everyone who doesn't, you can leave your comments in the chat window. So you can, we'll also try to make this interactive a little bit later with polls and whatnot. But if you're also watching this in as a recording, then feel free to share the link with your colleagues. You can always find our whole YouTube channel on Google easily by just typing in YouTube INTEA Learning, and there's a ton of videos and live conversations like this regarding anything useful to learning and development managers. We talk about technology, we talk about content, we talk about, I think, management and how to work with people and so on. Okay. So Apple presented Vision Pro just a few days ago, and everyone's talking about this. You can see how proud Tim Cook is. A lot of people have actually noticed that not a single executive of Apple has worn the device on their head. That is telling, but again, we'll get to this a little bit later. So first of all, what is that, and why is everyone talking about, and why so much hype? Probably more than about any Apple product in the recent years, and how it's related to learning and development. So first of all, it's a headset, right? So it's a headset that you wear on your head. It also has a battery that you put in your pocket, but that is just a technology limitation that will hopefully go away at one point. And it's said to be kind of the new interface, the ultimate device for productivity, for entertainment, for everything, kind of like the next iPhone. You'll do everything with it, inside it, you'll communicate through it, you'll work within it, you'll have fun. It's simultaneously a display that kind of shows stuff to you, and it's a ton of cameras which film the things around you, and the amount of technology in there is really, really exciting. So the question is, is it really a VR helmet, and how is it different from VR? And we were under full impression that we had the AR/VR conversation in one of our breakfasts, but we couldn't find it. So we decided that we'll talk a little bit about VR and AR, what they are. I'm talking in rhymes.
Yeah, VR, AR, what they are. Cool.
Right, and what they are in
learning and development,
and how they work, and what's the difference in technology. So first of all, virtual reality, right? Yeah. VR, virtual stands for something that does not exist, right? You access it by wearing a helmet on your head that completely blocks your vision, and there is a display inside, or rather two little displays, one for each eye. So you have the 3D vision, every eye gets a little bit different picture. So you have the full immersion in a world where you cannot see anything else. You are in that magical world entirely. This is what it looks from within. If you buy like a $500 Oculus, I think this is from Oculus device, this is what you get, right? Typically, they used to be like wired to computers and required a lot of computing power. Now they are just worn on your head, and the processor and the battery are built in. Essentially, they are powered by mobile phone processors. And so you can't see anything, you cannot see your hands. To see your hands, you will need to hold some device, and it has buttons, and you have to interact with it. And the upside of that is, of course, that it's full immersion, right? You can build whatever you like in there, and it feels like you're in a medieval castle. That's one of my son's favorite games. Or you are in, my son's top favorite, absolutely, VR game is Virtual Office. You sit in the office, you have a computer, you have a copier, you have like a toaster. For some reason, there's a coffee machine, and you can interact with all of that, and you get little quests, like here's a document, you need to make a copy of this, and I don't know.
I think he has to join us for internship.
Yeah,
you don't need the VR.
I'm like, you want 12 hours of this for free? Easy, right? So, but yeah, also you can be in a medieval castle. You can fly through space, and so on and so on. Now, the other part of that is augmented reality, and augmented means that it's the actual reality, our reality, but we augment it, we change it a little bit, we add stuff. So with AR, you typically wear something that's transparent, so you can see the world, but it's also a display which shows something on top of that world. And the things that you see, they can be either just floating in the air in front of you, like a display, or they can be linked to actual environment. So something, let's say, is linked. If you see a virtual bookcase that is on the wall, and if you look away, it's not there. If you look at it, it's there. So you feel like there is a bookcase on the wall, but it's really not there. But it's your wall, right? No one created a 3D model of it. You're just looking through a glass on your wall, and that glass also displays something else. It augments your reality. It can look like this huge helmet. It can look small, like this Google product, which has been discontinued pretty much. Can be not as obtrusive, and this is more or less what it looks like. And you can immediately see one of the problems, because the display has to be transparent, but at the same time it has to be non-transparent to display objects that feel real, not like they're shimmering like ghosts in the air. It's a tough technical challenge, right? And unless you are in a specifically prepared environment, like the lights are a little bit dimmed and the display is really bright, so that the brightness of the display can compete with the brightness of objects around you, then it can kind of like create this illusion of things being real on a transparent display. But it's always a little bit challenging. So yeah, these are these two technologies, and of course AR, you will find sometimes that augmented reality can also be viewed through a device like a handheld iPad or a phone. Essentially, it has a camera, it looks at everything in front of you, draws something on top of it, and by looking at an empty corner through your phone, you can see something in that corner that's not there. Great for choosing furniture or playing around with other objects. We'll talk about how learning and development can use that as well. So that's kind of these two technologies. The big question, yes, is so what's this new thing which we remind you is called Apple Vision Pro? They did not use AR, they did not use VR. They did not invent anything. There's words like MR, XR. XR stands for extended reality. I think for modified. I'm not sure, but they just call it Vision Pro. So what is it? Let me switch real quick to our stream and ask the community. So let's see what you say in the chat.
So
Yes. So
we get back to kind of we'll tell the answer later, right?
yeah, let's
do it like that.
Let's see if we explain it and you see what happens. So the way it works, it actually blocks your vision entirely, right? You cannot see through that thing at all. You can just block out everything. There's still like two little displays with two little lenses that project everything in your eyes. But at the same time, it has cameras on both sides. So on one hand, it's filming everything that's happening around you and puts it into your eyes so you can sort of see through it. On the other hand, it films your face, or rather even reconstructs your face using a number of cameras and shows your face on the outside of the helmet so people feel like they can see your eyes when you look at them through this thing.
Okay, so these are not the real eyes of this lady on the right, right?
No, not her eyes, and not even a camera filming her eyes. It's a number of sensors filming her facial expression and then reconstructing a 3D model of her face so that it looks right from every dimension, and it's just shown on the display which is outside. So there is a display on the outside showing your face, and there are displays inside showing you the reality, so it's see-through in both ways, but artificially. And if you don't want that, you can switch it off, right? So outside, no, you don't. People don't see your face, and from the inside, you don't see anyone. You are just immersed into a full thing. So this is how it works. The tech that is going into this thing is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, hence the price.
Hence the price. Yes. By the way, this thing costs $3,500. Obviously, this is really high price, but it's called Pro. And it has been unveiled not as a consumer product, but at the developer conference of Apple. So they expect that people buy this, start developing use cases for this, and it sort of finds its own market niche, and then it becomes like a proper product in generation 2 or 3 or maybe 4. I remember when Apple launched MacBook Air. It's very hard to imagine these days, but that was about 15 years ago, 2007, I think. And what they did, so Steve Jobs was on stage and he took an envelope, like a paper envelope, opened it up and just took the computer out of it, and everyone was really flabbergasted. They were like, wow, like how can you do that? Because computers in those days were about that thick. They weighed about like 2 kilos, and that thing was like under a kilo, super thin, super lightweight. The problem was that it was, Raivis actually Googled that it was 2013. Really, the first one.
10 years ago. Feels like
eternity.
Eternity, yeah. Really.
That's iPad Air. I'm talking about MacBook Air.
Ah, sorry. That missed MacBook. Yeah. This is when
2008.
8.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you're right. You're right.
I remember where I was and I know the year. Anyhow, so it was really, really slow. Why? Because to make it that thin, they had to find the smallest, thinnest hard drive for it. Yeah. And the only place they could find it was iPod. An iPod, if you remember, that was the MP3 player by Apple. And an MP3 player does not need a fast hard drive. It needs an energy efficient and very lightweight and very small, compact hard drive, but very, very slow, because all it does, it loads like a 3 megabyte song, once every 3 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So it wasn't great.
For a personal computer, definitely not.
But it did revolutionize a lot of things, and then new generations came along, and then the new generations of hard drive like SSD drives came along, which are super fast yet super light and don't have moving parts and so on and so on. The ones that we use and everyone uses these days. So it became better. Hopefully this will happen to Vision Pro as well. We don't know yet, but it's too early to judge and to say that it's, let's say, too heavy or too power hungry or something. Anyhow, the way that it works is that it does project the surrounding room into your eyes, and on top of that room, it places the interface, right? The normal Apple apps that we all know and love. unless you're like me and you don't have an Apple phone. The apps can be anything, it can be photos, can be productivity. There is one, essentially Apple is presenting us with two use cases. One is productivity, right? So there is a woman inside her hotel room having a meeting on the run where she has a huge virtual display with the presentation that they're looking at. And then she has a lot of people that she's talking to hanging in the air somewhere else. The question is, to me, this is a little bit dubious, right? So if I'm on the run, I'm totally fine with having this on my computer. I don't need to see those people. I'll just switch them off. Probably the bandwidth in hotels is not great as well. And if I need to look at my presentation, I probably have my laptop with me. I can look at that and so on. That's a bit weird, right? Also, there is a cool thing that since when you talk through those glasses, it doesn't have a webcam, so there is no outside webcam to film you. So what it does, it actually scans your face, removes the goggles virtually, creates like a representation, AI representation of your face, and sends it as the signal. So essentially, if you want,
it's like an avatar,
it's like
an animated avatar.
Animated avatar, and I don't know. I need to see a lot of those to understand if they're creepy or not. But that's an interesting technology, right? So people don't even know essentially that you're wearing anything. So that's a use case. That's weird to me, and in general, I'm not sure if I would be using that device for that, and if it's really realistic. But this is what Apple is showing. The other one is entertainment, right? So you can watch panoramic photos around you. You can watch movies on the biggest screen in your life. You can shut out the surroundings entirely. There is a cool feature when someone comes into you and the face is recognized. It actually like fades into you through the screen, and so your mom can say, you little kid, you go have dinner, or your wife can tell you the same. And so that's another use case. Entertainment on the go. You can be anywhere and you can see that every like huge screen and the biggest movie and the biggest sound and so on. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe if you live in a tiny, terrible apartment and you can't do that, then yes. But they're showing, of course, everyone sitting in those huge, nice living rooms.
Yeah, hotel room like a stadium. I mean, when is the last time you saw?
I've been in hotel rooms like that. Typically, not on my own expense. It's when a client flies you somewhere and says, "Hey, we booked you a room for our conference," and then it's like the thing that I buy for myself is really small. But it's then maybe, or maybe if you're sitting in an airplane and there is definitely not enough space and you're tired of watching your iPad or computer like that.
My favorite use case is that in these glasses people don't see what you're doing. So this is that time when if you are doing your work while you're traveling, you can do that securely. Nobody sees your confidential information. So that's kind of okay.
Let us know if you have that device, but a lot of companies actually mandate that you have those privacy screens on your computers where you can only see your computer if you're right in front of it, and if you're in the next seat, you look at it, it just looks black to you. So maybe privacy, but they are not talking about privacy.
Yeah, they are not.
Maybe if you need to have like 20 huge screens on the run, if you're like a guard walking around some facility and you need to check cameras on big screens and you cannot bring screens with you and so on. Again, they're not talking about this use case. I'm not even sure how marginal that is. So in total, the use cases that Apple has shown made not only us, but also the industry as a whole, start asking questions, right? So Wired, probably one of the most recognized magazines on technology, is saying that the new mixed reality headset is an alarming misfire. Alarming misfire.
No, it's one of the bad.
Yes, it sounds bad. It's one of the harshest things that anyone has said. But in general, the consensus is that let's at least wait and see what is going on there.
stock market as well, not excited. It's not punishing Apple, but yeah,
No.
we don't see like a stock.
Can you check the poll, by the way? Not many people.
Not many people.
Okay.
So, but the answer is?
But the answer is essentially what I think is that it's both. I think it's, well, first of all, the way it works is augmented reality. So it shows you the reality and then puts something on top of it. So it's definitely an AR device. But the technology that they use is essentially VR, and it can switch to VR mode entirely. So I think as far as hybrids go, this is a perfect hybrid of two technologies. And I think this is the pattern for the future. The technology is finally there to be able to film everything and transmit into your eyes at such speed that you don't get motion sickness from the difference between your body movement and what your eyes see, because there is a delay and so on and so on. So, but again, we still have to see how people react to this and whether it's really that smooth and fast and seamless, and if people do get motion sickness from that anyhow. So we'll see, more testing is needed, but generally I would say that this is an AR device built on top of VR, and it's a perfect hybrid, and I hope that more companies will adopt this approach as we go. So what's the use of it for learning, right? And if it's going to transform our industry or not. Before we look into the future, let's step back into the past. It's been 55 years since the first actual VR device was launched, of course by Americans, of course by the military. It's called the Sword of Damocles. I think it's still alive in a number of prototypes. You can try it in Computer Museum in Silicon Valley. And you can see that it's a little bit cumbersome. It shows a number of different prototypes of this thing, but it's not something that you can just take out of pocket and then put on your face. But the idea of projecting something that's not there into your eyes is not new, and since then it has moved on quite a lot. We see that used in training, still in military, pilot training, stuff like that. We see it being adopted in even cheaper sort of industries like retail, for example, warehousing, and so on. So the question is, what is it? Let's talk quickly about now that we know what VR and AR are. Again, rhymes. So let's look at what is the use case for that in learning and development. So first of all, obviously it's training, right? So if you need to train pilots how to fly stuff before you put them into a real plane, it's great to put them into a virtual reality. And especially if you don't need to build the whole plane around them, you can just use those cheap goggles and do that. With airlines, you can spend a lot of effort and money on simulating stuff as close as possible to reality. In other industries, you might want to go with a cheaper device like $1,000 VR headset, or even if it's $3,000 like the Apple one. So we've seen people training in safety. We've seen people training in maintenance of plants. We've seen people training in maintenance of machinery and so on. So before you send someone to fix like a radio tower, you can ask them.
I have a case from South Africa for mining. VR is used widely to train people who operate those multi-million machines, and it's about training. Of course, you're training these people, but the biggest return on investment comes from the point that if you are operating the real machine in the wrong way and it gets broken down, then every hour you spend maintaining it or extra maintaining costs much more than all the effort for the VR, or kind of VR production.
Yeah, of course.
So basically, you're trying to save on maintenance rather than save on training.
And then again, I think that building a simulator is comparable in cost to building the real thing, right? So
very often,
especially if it's a one of a kind, right? Planes are produced by dozens or hundreds, but some mining equipment is produced by like one or two or three machines for a specific purpose, and if you want to produce a fourth one to be used as a simulator, okay, you don't need to produce the whole thing, but the cost will be comparable. So anyhow, like training, in simulators, but also you can use it for soft skill practice. Like, hey, if you can role play as a doctor and meet virtual patients and talk to them. And we've talked about how impactful VR is when it comes to immersing people in other people's shoes, right? We talked about homeless simulator, which teaches people empathy. You can be immersed into a different gender role, for example, right? Do you want to be like a little girl and be bullied and feel what that feels like, right? When people around you are like way taller and scarier and so on, do you want to be in those shoes to learn something, right? Do you want to be in the shoes of McDonald's? Like, in McDonald's, all the management, they spend a couple of shifts every now and then, like flipping burgers, essentially. Can you scale this up by letting everyone, flip a little bit of virtual burgers in a virtual environment to understand what it feels like to be in the mine, for example, and so on? So it's about soft skills, it's about empathy, it's about learning how to interact with people in environments where you don't typically see them, and it's an important thing, especially nowadays when travel is sort of out of fashion. So very useful. Yes, and so of course, immersive experiences. I know that there are a number of products which help you train public speaking skills.
Actually,
in front of a virtual audience, and that virtual audience will react to what you're saying. It will react to your speech confidence and tone of voice. And if you make a pause, they will start yawning. And if you start droning, in a very boring tone of voice, they will start walking out, and you will get worried, and they will boo you, and you can immerse people into those really harsh scenarios and then prepare them before they go on stage and really make fools of themselves. So same thing for language practice and so on. There's also another aspect that is increasingly that we are increasingly more aware of in where we live, and of course it's a bigger deal in the United States. It's accessibility and inclusivity, right? So there are people who cannot visit certain places, like you can go and underwater dive even if you have health conditions which don't allow you to. You can go into a mine, or you can go to ride on a train, or you can do things in virtual reality that you are physically not capable of doing in real life because you have certain impairments. And that is important for including your own employees into what your company is doing, right? Somebody cannot, if you're a cruise line, right, and somebody cannot go on a cruise for whatever reason, you can offer them this experience, for example. Right, or if someone is, like, if you have a factory in one country and there are people in other countries, you can give them tours of that factory in virtual reality to make them feel like they've been there without the extra cost and all the logistics. So you can do that as well. Right, and of course, there's something that we often see is collaborative learning, and that typically refers to you seeing a ton of little avatars of other people in virtual environments and they talk. We think that's crap. That doesn't work. Like if you want to see people like launch Zoom, that's it. You don't need to put them into 3D. You don't need to assemble them in virtual classes on little virtual benches, and you stand in front of a little virtual screen that you cannot really properly zoom into, and it's simulating the worst parts of reality. And just hindrances. That thing has been around like years and years. There's been academia, there's been a Second Life, there's been metaverse, which peaked and flopped, I think, faster than anything ever.
It's flopped faster than peaked. It started flopping before I understood what it is, to be honest.
Can you imagine renaming your huge company, like one of the biggest companies in the world, into Meta for a product that didn't take off? Like, it's crazy.
Maybe it will still pick up.
Yeah,
at some point. We don't know.
But yeah, I think that is a use case that's often cited, but we don't believe in it. But so we want to talk about. This is an example of a project that we've built actually for an actual customer, where you walk around a virtual tour.
No goggles needed.
Yeah, it actually can be used in two ways. One,
Yeah.
you can go through that on your computer, like in a first-person perspective, or you can actually use it in goggles. Our specific customer in that case is not using this through goggles, but you can totally do that, and you can look around and see that facility. It looks a little bit scary, but this is what facilities do look like. And that is also part of getting you prepped for the job, because if you look at those nice stock pictures of very nice factories, and then you come to the real thing and you're like, oh my God, this is so dirty and noisy and so on. But this is how factories, steel factories, steel mills look like. So you get prepared for the real thing, because it's built inside, like based on the real thing, right? So you walk around, you look around, you interact with objects, and you play as an inspector of equipment. We've built it with a super cheap technology called Scenario VR. Great tool, excellent tool that we've had great experience with. And the way it works, you just take a 3D or rather 360 camera, you take pictures or videos of different surroundings, and then you stitch them together in scenes. You add interactive objects. You don't need to create like complex 3D assets. You don't need to really scan everything. It's not as interactive as it could be if you had millions of dollars to build this, but it can be built within budgets and within time frames that are accessible to normal L&D departments. So couldn't recommend it more. Like it's really great, Scenario VR. Okay, let's talk about augmented reality and learning and development now. So one of the things that's immediately useful is on-the-job training. So typically you come to a new facility, you look around and okay, where do I go, right? No one is putting signage everywhere for newbies, right?
Yeah.
Using AR, you can have that signage inside your field of vision, but cheap and non-existent in the real world, that will guide you around. So you can walk into a factory, for example, or into a bank, and your AR goggles will tell you, well, this is the exit to the main facility, go there. And you go there, you open the door, you look around, and it says, well, this is our machine number 1, and this is machine number 2. And you can walk around and see in the back and go there and, let's say, scan a code or look at that thing, so that we actually know that you've been there, and we'll send this data to the LMS, so we know that you've actually taken this tour, right? So we can also track what you're doing and if you've actually done the tour and so on. So just purely for the training purposes, very useful if you need to create those self-guided tours of facilities, which go at least one step beyond the audio tours, like in museums, when you actually look at stuff and you listen to someone talking about this. You can do this visually and automatically as well. Same thing for in-field onboarding, right? So someone arrives at the facility, and let's say the first time they do a certain procedure, it's in guided mode. So it tells them, hey, you go there, you take the box number 1, you grab it, you bring it to the table number 2, and you, I don't know, click those 2 buttons, and then it slides into the machine, and then you go around and you wait until it slides out, and so on and so on. So in field, right on the job, you can do both. You can both train people and you can onboard them for the actual job. You can also help them do their jobs as performance support, essentially. Especially, in safety, you can ask people, hey, can you evacuate? Hey, we'll actually put things on fire inside your field of vision, and you cannot go into fire. So you have to find an escape route. We'll detect if you're looking at an elevator, and we'll tell you, hey, you can't use elevators. And you'll have to find those, let's say, 10 exit sides on the way down, and you have to come to the assembly point, and this is how your safety training is actually completed. So you have successfully escaped from your own place into the outside world in a simulated environment, which did not cost us the cost of setting
burning down the facility.
Yeah, exactly.
Simulate it.
Right, so you can do that. Like we said, job performance support. It's actually one of the last use cases, and we'll talk about why some of these things aren't happening on a wider scale. Is when you're a mechanic on an airline, for example. So you can go into the warehouse, look at a number of shelves with different parts, and the AR will indicate which shelf you need to go to directly. You will grab stuff, you will come back, and it will indicate where you put that stuff. Of course, you still need to be trained and certified, and everything is double and triple checked in aviation. But it just saves you the mental effort of looking for stuff, and it just makes your job a little bit easier and makes you do things maybe a little bit safer by
But also when you'll be installing something or doing any maintenance in the aircraft, again, you can get that augmented support, with manuals, information, procedures, steps.
Yeah, like what's the next step?
What's the next step? Yeah, and this is very helpful,
especially like
if you're doing something high tech.
If that thing is in your field of vision, and you have your both hands available to actually do your stuff.
You're not like having this thing, having the manual, and then okay.
Exactly right. So how do I hold the manual and then use two hands to install this gadget? Right. So this is what it looks more or less in real life. Large warehouse companies use that. Large retail companies use that. Maintenance companies use that. Assembly lines and so on. To a great extent, in the office, it's of course way less popular. So if you're looking for ways to use it for your office, then maybe you can buy like a dozen of those things, create that program to engage people, to get them out of their seats, to make them walk around and interact with the environment. But probably it will not be on their faces 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Here's another example. I just like this scary picture. So this is an F-35 pilot in the augmented reality helmet. It's carbon fiber. It costs more than a Ferrari. It takes like 2 or 3 days to get fitted to each individual's head. And what it allows them to do is essentially it makes the plane transparent to them. So typically you sit in a plane and you can only see in front and you're on top and maybe a little bit in the back. You don't see anything underneath it. And with that thing, you can actually look around and you can see objects projected onto your plane. So like if you're targeted somewhere below you, you can look at the plane, you can still see the target. You don't need to look at the screen in front of you.
Or so open the window, like in the old days.
I guess the windows don't open nowadays.
No.
Right. So that's one of the use cases, and of course, if you have like unlimited budgets to spend, like the U.S. military, you can do fun stuff with it. Right. So a couple of problems that we wanted to indicate as well regarding adoption of these things and why we aren't all wearing them, and why even VR goggles at the price of like 300 euros is not in absolutely every household. And if it is, then it's more like a toy for kids rather than anything, and why we still watch TVs, not the VR stuff, although potentially the VR stuff can show you something huge and so on. So one of the things is actually like the technology, it's getting there, but the real world is still better in high definition. But the huge thing is human interface inertia, right? We got used to some things real quick, like to mobile phones, but to other things not so fast. And some things that we take for granted, like computer mouse, they actually were invented at some point. They were a novelty, and then they took years to get used to, not to just the mouse itself, but to the hand-eye coordination and using that inside the interface. I think Xerox actually invented it, and then Apple pioneered it as a consumer device with their Apple II computer. I think it was like one-click mouse, one-button mouse. And then Windows, when they launched their own graphical interface with 2 buttons, they needed to train millions of people of how to use that. And that is one of my favorite examples in learning and development. It's the perfect case of e-learning. We train people using computers to do something, but they don't even know that they're being trained. You know how? What happened? They launched these two games. So Minesweeper, which was included in every Windows from the very beginning, you can, the whole point is that you click either with the left button to open or with the right button to mark a mine, and this is how you sweep mines. And you can do this for hours, and you actually train to point rather small object, this little square, and then click it with the right mouse button. And then dragging stuff around like your documents between folders is super easy, right? Or dragging to select, easy. Right-click menus, easy, right? Because you've done this a million times in Minesweeper and you didn't even notice. If I asked you, like, as an exercise, can you drag 15 documents from left to right? You'll be tired by the second document. If I ask you to play Minesweeper, you'll do 500 clicks within 10 minutes and you will not even notice it. But the hand-eye coordination will build itself. Same thing with Solitaire. The whole purpose of Solitaire was to enable people to drag stuff around. How do I make you drag something on the screen for hours? I gamify it, right? Yeah. That is like, this is pure evil genius of Microsoft, I would say. Really sneaky way to train people.
So where it brings us is that all this new technology takes much more than just right click, left click.
Yes, and the new technology, like putting things on your head, selecting by looking, this is how it works. Interacting it with your hands in the air, this is how it works. It actually tracks your hands. They can be down low, and you pinch stuff and it kind of selects it, and it tracks your head movement and your eye movement, so it selects the thing that you're looking at. But this is super weird. I've tried interfaces like that. That is super weird.
You have to learn it.
Yeah, and there are buttons on the headset that you also have to find to adjust certain things when you need them. And the pure idea of, hey, I need to check my email, I take my phone, I don't even think about this. I take my phone out and I look at that, and then I understand that I wanted to check my email, right? After I've scrolled through like 15 posts on Twitter. But with that thing, I need to do something, I put that on, right? Opening your laptop is automatic. Taking this thing on is not automatic. For me, I try to wear goggles. I don't, because with spectacles I have a problem. I don't have the physical muscle memory to carry them around. They always left behind somewhere. Like I put them in the car, I drive, I leave them in the car, I come to office and I'm like, oh my God, they're in the car. I go back to the car, I use them in the office, I take them off somewhere, and I go down to the car. Jesus, I left them in the, like, it's terrible. In the couple of years that I was trying to wear glasses, there has been 0 movies when I would come to a movie theater and have my glasses with me only. Because I only need them to see certain things. I don't need them like every minute of my existence. It's not that bad. So I failed to develop it. Imagine that, it's like a half a kilo piece of glass which is costing you $3,000, so you cannot even drop it. It's not like, hey, you can drop it into the backseat of your car until you need it. So, like, I don't know. So human inertia, just to go back to this, human interface inertia is bad. It's a thing, and it's going to hinder the performance of this thing. Another one, manipulating anything in the air is for the movies, right? This interface does not work. Your hands get tired. If you look at yourself, you always like, look, your elbow is here because it's hard. My hand is there.
It's never.
It's never. Talk. It's never like that. Yes. Let me manipulate. Like, you type. Can you type in the air? You can't. You cannot type in the air. There are those virtual keyboards which are projected on the table, but you can't even type on the table because the tactile feeling is different from keyboard, which springs up. So you'll need physical keyboards, right? You'll need physical mouse probably. This pinch and move and drag around those windows like doesn't work like that. Look at something and then without raising your hand, just do this with your hand. Doesn't work like
Imagine that in different cultures with different gestures.
Yeah.
Because there are cultures where, like Latvia, where we sit like that all the time, and then there are cultures where your hands
and
do a lot
window,
of stuff.
Windows just fly around.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
so
of course it will learn, but
so it's
not easy.
That will be a huge problem, I think, right? Another thing, that's not an invisible device, and it's not invisible on both sides. First of all, phones are invisible, right? We don't know they're there. You look at that, and then you look back, and like it's not even there. Same thing with computers. That thing is in your field of vision. It's in there, right? It's projecting something, but it's still on your head, on your nose. It weighs something. It actually has a battery and a wire, and you feel it, right? It's not like a TV where you turn away, there is no TV. You look at it, there is a TV. Like that thing is always with you, and it's also not invisible from the outside. Like you wear it. Like a lot of people in the United States now use the word dork. They're like, it's like ski goggles, like a ski mask, snowboarding mask, like a snorkeling mask, and so on. And you look weird, and even with those your eyes projected outside, so to indicate that you're aware of someone, still looks weird. And imagine like a whole office and those things. For me, that is a bit hard. So I think that the fact that it's so intrusive will hinder the performance, and that is what hindered the adoption of previous goggles as well. So that doesn't solve this particular problem. Now there's health concerns. One of the problems is that when your head movement or eye movement does not correlate ideally to what your vision tells you, like I tilt my head, everything tilts, okay. In virtual reality, there is a delay, right? So you tilt your head and then image reacts, like there is a sensor which tells the computer that your head is tilted, and then the computer renders a new image and sends it back to you.
Even if it's like,
even if it's
like fraction of a second, you still feel it. Yeah,
you still feel it.
Yeah,
and that it causes motion sickness, and therefore people cannot operate within those things for more than depends. Some people can operate for a few minutes, some people can operate for longer, but it's still, and also we don't know what happens if you do this for 8 hours a day for the rest of your life. So Apple is telling us that the delay is it's like 12 milliseconds. It's so fast that your brain does not react to this. But then they never say that it eliminates motion sickness. They say it helps prevent or something like that.
They have to be cautious with what they're saying.
I'm not sure that it's actually a thing.
Privacy.
And then privacy. So since this thing has cameras which are filming everything and recording everything at all times and sending it to you, and potentially sending it somewhere else as well.
Most probably.
The question is it all right if you're watching a movie inside those goggles on your screen, and your partner walks around you in looking like they probably don't want to be filmed, and you're essentially just still filming them just for the sake of the system not just recognizing them or letting you not to bump into them if you walk around and so on.
Yeah, because the system is essentially filming all the time.
Yes.
That's how it works, right?
Is it all right if you're walking around a facility which is restricted and you're filming it? Is it all right? If you're walking around in the street or driving or walking around your office, is it okay for you to film your
not
coworkers?
Really. You have to ask consent of every person there whom you film.
That is exactly what killed Google Glass. The idea was that you wear it all the time. It's very as unintrusive as possible. Really sleek little goggles that just display useful information to you, but it's filming everyone all the time, and you cannot really say if it's filming or not at a particular moment. So they got banned in a number of countries, especially security, like countries which are always obsessed about privacy, like Germany. And then California followed, and that it essentially just killed the product and moved it inside private warehouses and private production facilities where everyone sort of agrees that they're being filmed all the time with cameras around you and so on. So it doesn't matter if there is another camera on somebody's nose. So that is a big issue which does not have a simple solution. And as a final example, I just wanted to mention iPads. They were introduced as this great next thing, and then they tried to replace computers, and everyone said like, we won't need laptops, and they couldn't because they didn't have keyboards and mouse and so on. Touch interface doesn't allow you to be as productive as you want to be for your office tasks. Even introduction of stands and keyboards did not help much. The fact that you cannot put it anywhere properly and it needs those stands and those magic covers and whatnot is not great. So you have to hold it oftentimes, and even to put in something you need to be in front of a desk. So if you're just sitting in a chair, you need to hold it. If you're lying, you need to hold it like that. So you get tired again. Hands in the air don't work for anything. The only thing where it works is where hygiene is involved. So two things: kids, because you cannot give a laptop to kids; they will ruin it immediately. But you can give an iPad to kids; they can smear anything on it; it just washes off. And same thing is for medical facilities, right? In medical facilities, they stopped using computers and they increasingly moved to iPads because it's more hygienic. But outside of like certain fringe use cases, it's not like laptops are gone, phones are gone, it's all iPads. iPads are not used in the office 99% of the time. And then for home entertainment, typically everyone has it, but it's just lying somewhere waiting for something.
For example, designers do use that to draw, like a pad. But again, it's a narrow purpose. It's not like a revolutionizing thing that everybody's using.
And then most of designers, they need, like, they will use a Wacom with a bigger screen and so on. It's a different system. So just a pure iPad, not necessarily.
No, some
it was slated for a very large adoption.
Let's look at the data.
And actually, yes, we have sales chart of Apple. You can see how
phones
are making
like 50% more or less, even more.
No. What I'm trying to say is these peaks. You can see that people buy stuff for Christmas, and it's still a great present. But you can see the proportion of iPads. It's the orange one, the second one, and you can see how it's about 6%, I think, of total sales, and it's not growing. If anything, it was popular at some point, and now it's stable at a very, very small amount. The fun part is iPod, right, which disappeared out of its sales. And you can see how iPhones are getting adopted, right? So iPhones is where they don't present any hazard in terms of interface or the way we use them or how useful they are for the price and so on and so on. So they're great. Everything else is a bit questionable, right? And you can also see that really iPhones, they do provide those peaks. Wearables and iPads, they do provide those peaks. But the computers, they don't provide peaks, right? So because it's business purchase, you don't buy them as presents typically. It's interesting. But outside of that, I just wanted to tell you that in what you said, 2013, right? So it's iPad Air. iPad, the big iPad, the first iPad was introduced in 2010. So in those 13 years, that thing did not become the big thing. I think Vision Pro will be a lot like that. We'll see, of course. So it's still a question. It's a question to you. If you're watching this later, leave a comment. What do you think? Do you want to buy one? If you had a chance to buy it, not at this incredible price of $3,500 before tax.
Or rather, if you have $3,500, what are you going to buy?
3 iPhones.
3 iPhones. A MacBook Air and an iPhone or
a
Vision
MacBook
Pro.
Or a Vision Pro, right? So let us know on that note.
I love that picture.
So people are making fun of this, and people were not making fun of other products. Typically, they do make fun of number of cameras on phones and so on, but we all got used to having like 5 cameras on a phone. But yeah, people are making fun actively about Vision Pro. Go look for memes. It's great after all. And that is the last breakfast in this series. We'll see you in September. If you have any questions, we're still here. We're not going on vacation. We're still working. Get in touch with us. Subscribe to our social networks. Watch our videos. Write emails to us, info@INTEA.lv, and we'll be very happy to chat about anything from future to past to your immediate needs in e-learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.